Hi folks, welcome to another episode of My Life with Robert Burns. Jim Thompson and Douglas Mackenzie here again to talk to another of our cronies from around the Burns world. Hi Jim, how are you getting on?
I'm doing great. This is a good day already. Hi, everybody.
Very good. Tonight's guest, folks, is the president of Hamilton Burns Club and the secretary of Motherwell Traffic Burns Club. Cronies everywhere, please welcome George Trayner.
Good evening. Hello.
Hi George, how are you doing?
Yeah, I'm doing well, thank you.
Good. George, if you've watched some of these, you'll know that the question we ask first of all is, George, can you please tell us a little bit about yourself?
No bother. Hopefully everybody's boiled their kettle and's got their cuppa, because this could take a wee while. But I'm 56 years old. I retired from Police Scotland 2 years ago, having done 30 years in the police. I'm married and I have two adult daughters. One's a nurse at the Royal and the other one's a physiotherapist at Hare Myers. So that was good planning. I reckon in my old age, my wife and I should be set all right to be looked after, but we'll see what happens. My police career involved mainly in the motorcycle unit for a majority of my time within the traffic department. Hence the reason I'm involved with Motherwell Traffic Group, but we'll talk about that in a wee while. I joined in 1991, got into traffic in 1994, and then from there on I was in cars and then transferred over to motorbikes. But prior to going to the motorbikes, I was dealing with a lot of fatal road accidents, unfortunately, as you do in the traffic, and we were covering all over and getting sent all over. And during that time, I thought that we were dealing with bereaved families and dead people okay, but we could be doing it that wee bit better. So I did a lot of research and a lot of work, and I ended up teaching family liaison at the Scottish Police College on the national course. So I would teach the traffic, CID, overseas students, the whole kind of shebang. And basically, the family liaison stuff led to, in 2017, I was awarded the Queen's Police Medal, which sits alongside OBEs and MBEs. And I was invited to Holyrood with my wife and daughters, and received the medal from the Queen, which I'm really pleased and proud about. Thereafter, I went to get the medal presented, and you're obviously well prepped at what to do and stuff. And I went up, and you bow and you stand, and she pins a medal on you, and she chats to you, you know. And as you would expect, everybody's nervous going to meet the Queen and chat to her. And she said to me, "So what do you do?" Now, what she had actually said was, "What did you do?" As in, what did you do to deserve this medal? I thought, "What do you do?" And I said, "Well, I ride motorbikes, Your Majesty, and in fact, it's normally the back of my head that you see because we're whizzing by you to get you to all your venues." And she laughed and she went, "Yes, that's very interesting, but why are you here today?" I was like, oh, right, okay. Well, that was family liaison. She went, "All right, well." She says, "Well, both of those jobs are pretty tricky, are they not?" Right? And then shook my hand and moved me on, sort of thing, you know. Yeah.
Very good. Can I take you back even further, though? Can we go back to, born and bred in Lanarkshire?
Well, no, there's a story, and thank you. My wife had said to me, "Listen, see when you're doing this, do it chronologically and don't just blurt out." So thanks for reminding me of that. Born in Irvine Central, so Ayrshire. My father's from Coylton and my mother's from Dunure, just past Butlands. I've got a younger brother, Mark, and a younger sister, Louise. Both are married and live down south with their families now. My younger days, the first primary, we moved to Hamilton when I was 4 and a half, 5, from Ayrshire. So the first primary school that I went to was Barnclouth Primary in Hamilton. Now you imagine trying to spell that as a primary one kid. So
Imagine
I
trying to
started,
spell it now.
well, I started in primary one, and then they shut up Bancleuth. So I then moved to Shatley Roll Primary in primary two. And you're like, wait a minute, this spelling's not getting any easier here, you know. So thankfully, I then went back to Ayrshire for a small time, and I went to Fisherton Primary at Dunure, which was a whole lot easier to spell than the other two, you know. Then I came back to Charterrow, continued my education to Hamilton, and then we moved to Blackwood, and I went to Lismahago High for a year. And then became a dental technician, and I made Wallies for a few years. Ran a dental lab over in Lanark, which is absolutely nothing to do with burns. I'm not quite sure why I'm telling you this, but that was interesting. But I'd always fancied joining the police, and I was lucky enough in 1991 I did, and thereafter began that career.
Yeah. Was there anything about your secondary schooling that took you in that direction? What sort of subjects did you do?
Oh gosh, no, just the basics. Academically, I had a great note studying as much as I should have. I didn't get any hires. I got some O grades in Hamilton Grammar in fourth year, and then my folks moved to Blackwood, and I transferred to Lismahago High. And the deal was that I couldn't leave the school until I'd got a job. So I started fifth year with the pretense of doing hires, but in actual fact, just looking for a job. And the job I got was it was a school careers officer that had come in, and they were looking for a full-time technician at Lismahago. So I started there. I was lucky to get that job, started there. And then after a couple of years, it was an apprenticeship. It's a 5-year apprenticeship you do. And a few years in, there was another job come up in Lanark, but it was for a qualified technician. And I applied for it, and there was a third-year student. I was a second year at the time, and we both got the one job. So the two of us shared the one job, and they employed the two of us. Unfortunately, the third-year student wasn't particularly good, so unfortunately he fell by the wayside, and I got left it myself. And the lab was busy. We had 5 dentists full-time, and we were making crowns, bridges, orthodontic appliances. You would spend a full day making like the braces for school kids, you know, to make their teeth straight. So you spend a whole day doing that, give it to a dentist, he would fit it. The following day, the wee kid would come back in going, I broke my brace. And you'd say, well, how did you manage that? As he takes it out of his pocket, you know, and you're like, I just spent 8 hours making that for you, so you can smile when you're an adult. So that was good fun and good times as I was there.
Well, you might be surprised. You know, you said you didn't know whether it was worth mentioning that, but you might be surprised that there's at least 2 of the members of the New Comet Burns Club who are the sponsors of these podcasts are ex-dental. Well, in fact, one of them still working in the industry. So they'll be very interested, because we've heard many conversations about dental work and all the trials and tribulations, haven't we, Jim?
Plenty of jokes as well.
Just saying, it's crazy. We used to make gold shell crowns, so it's like your gold teeth. And for a wee while, it was fashionable for people to have like wee gold inlays in their teeth. But to make the gold, you would have to melt it up. And then we got asbestos, and basically just compressed the asbestos wet down onto the gold to push it into the mold to make the gold. And the old technician who had retired just prior to me starting used to come in and visit us. And he would say, oh, the easiest way to do that, son, is just to get your asbestos and chew it for a wee while to get it nice and gummy, and then put it on. And you're thinking, how is he still alive? Never mind how I'm still alive.
Well, another of our Burns Club members is a plumber, and he tells a similar story about, you know, using the packing for roundabout pipes, and the asbestos packing, and you just chewed it. And he's just turned 80 last week, so he's doing well.
But if you see me soon later, I've got a wee bit of asbestos in to keep me going longer.
Very good. And we've talked about career. How about hobbies and interests? Do you have any sports or that kind of thing?
I believe it or not, I still play five-a-side football. and I was an active kayaker. I used to go canoeing a lot and was very good at it for a long time. Latterly, I'm too fat and too old, right enough, but I've still got all my stuff in my boat. So the River Clyde is just about 3 miles away from me here, so in the Clyde Valley. So it's really handy, and it's really clean now. The Clyde right up to Lanark, you know, they're getting salmon all the way up there, so it's really good. And funnily enough, in my younger days, I paddled. I would say I've probably paddled every river that you can in Scotland, including the Doon, you know, down through Alloway and stuff. And that was quite funny because you're paddling down by folk who are standing on the bank getting their wedding pictures taken, and you're in the background waving as the pictures are getting taken.
Very good, very good. And you're playing fives. You've not graduated to walking football yet. Then you're still fit enough to.
Not yet. No, well, that was my other hobby. I support Ayr United. I go down to Somerset when I can, and watch them. So I don't really know much about football, to be fair.
No, that's not fair, because you're talking to a fellow supporter here. The guy in the other window's not so enlightened.
I know we don't talk about Jim. No, I knew that. You know. They can make pies, but that's about it.
Very good. Maybe for some of our international viewers, maybe we need to explain some of these references. But anyway, let's move on. So you talked about your family. You married for many years?
Yes. Now you're going to get me into trouble. I was married in 1995, as he quickly does the math. So 28 years, yeah, I've been married. Happily married to Judy, who was in the police as well. So I started in Cumbernauld, and she was already there. She had 2 years service, and I joined, and I thought, oh, she's nice, and here we are. So all good.
Oh, there you go, fantastic. And you mentioned, was it 2 daughters?
2 daughters, yeah, Heather and Fiona. Heather's just moved out last year. She's got a flat in Motherwell. So our heating bills reduced and the water bills getting better.
Very good. And you almost got us on to talking a wee bit about Burns earlier on, because you said you weren't sure how you get into Burns, but I'm pretty sure you could tell us, but I'll let Jim ask these questions. I'll pass you over to Jim now.
George, the same in this. How did you bump into Burns in the first place?
I remember as a young boy, well, for a start, my father was born on the 25th of January. So for many a year, I thought that his birthday dinner was haggis, neeps and tatties, just simply for his birthday. You know? And I remember probably primary school, you know, we would have either a verse speaking competition, and I'm absolutely rubbish at reciting stuff. I can read it, but I can't remember it. And they also had art competitions, and I quite enjoy watercolours, painting them and drawing. So the competitions weren't that great that you'd win any competitions, but I remember enjoying drawing them, and especially Tam O'Shanter. And Jim, again, I commend you on your book in and out of Tam O'Shanter's Story of a Tale. That again brought it back to me, right back to the primary school days, where you're looking at that and you're looking at the black animated objects and just, you know, Kirk Calloway and Meg and the whole thing just comes to life, I think. You know? So that's my early recollections of Burns, and then nothing really. I remember as a young boy, STV, I think it was, would always have something on Burns night, and then the telly doesn't seem to have any, you know, recognition of Burns anymore on TV on the 25th. And then, as I say, I joined the police, and my dad, he was in the police as well. In fact, at one point, my father was in the traffic at Motherwell. I was at traffic south in Glasgow, and my wife was traffic north in Glasgow. So if you got a ticket, it was probably for a Trayner, you know. And the Motherwell Traffic Burns Club was on the go at that point. And I remember, in fact, just before joining the police, I gave him a lift back from East Kilbride. There was a police club, which was like a social club within the police office for police officers at that time. It was a bit like an army kind of NAFI, where you would be able to go, and it was a club that would sell alcohol. And I remember giving him and his pals a lift home, and the kind of joyous recollections of the night and the jokes and the pattern. And I thought that sounds really good. And then I was lucky enough to be invited along. Went along to East Kilbride, to the police club in East Kilbride, and that was the kind of first recollections of me going to a Burns supper. So that, I would say, my kind of specialism, if you like, is Burns suppers, as opposed to, you know, going to Burns events per se. But I thoroughly enjoyed it, and I remember, and Jim, I don't know if you went to any in East Kilbride, but I recall they would have to stop the proceedings about 2 hours in, literally stop everything and open all the windows, because you couldn't see the top table for cigarette and cigar smoke. You couldn't.
It's actually the same at every event they had in there. I mean, they used to go for the honours every year, you know, for if you represented then Strathclyde Police, as it was, and whatever, and it was exactly the same. You know, smoking was allowed, and you couldn't see 5 feet in front of you. It was like being in the fog. Terrible. I mean, it couldn't be healthy.
I remember coming back and thinking that was a good Burns supper, because I've had my kilt, my jacket out in the washing line for 3 days, and I still need to get it dry cleaned.
You mentioned Hamilton Police Burns supper, and obviously you're the secretary now, and I need you to talk to people about that. Having been invited to speak at it, I found it an absolutely brilliant night and a very well attended Burns supper. And it's obviously developed now, and well, it's not in East Kilbride anymore, so I'll let you tell people about it.
Okay, it used to be in East Kilbride in the police club, and then I can't remember, the chief constable that came in and said there is no police clubs anymore, because we don't want to have alcohol being sold within the perimeters of a police station, which is fine. So that shut down. At that point, we moved to the Colville Park Club, which is a golf and country club in Motherwell, which is ideal because it's a Motherwell Traffic Burns club. It was formed in 1979, 1980. That was our first ever supper. And it was really just for police officers who worked within Motherwell in the traffic department, and it was just a gathering of, let's celebrate Burns and have a Burns night. And it's grown from that to now, I would say, well, the most we've ever had was 282 at it, but we sit roughly 250, 260 every single year. And it's now retired cops, serving police officers, and their friends and family that come along. I took on the role of secretary, I don't know, maybe 10 years ago, and I was a chairman for 5 as well. And what I tried to do with it was change it just a wee tiny bit every year. The Colville Park's a really nice venue. The top table sits, you have a dance floor, and then you have a balustrade which kind of sits up from that. So you have, everyone has a really good view of the top table. So each year I would change it a wee bit. My youngest daughter did Highland dancing. So one of the years I had Highland dancers in at the start of the night to dance, to do that. We have had different types of solo male unaccompanied singers. We've had bands, we've had pipe bands, we've had solo pipers. And it's just to try and change the format of it a wee bit to keep people interested, if you like. We then, 3 years ago, unfortunately, the Colville Park Club, the chef had left and they weren't able to confirm if they could cook the meal or not. So at that point, we made a big decision to move to the Bothwell Bridge Hotel, because it's really difficult in Lanarkshire. There's not a lot of venues that can take 250 or more people. So we moved to Bothwell Bridge, and then COVID struck, and the Bothwell Bridge were bought over by new people who have shut the venue for a couple of years, and they're going to revamp it as a wedding venue. which I don't think will be a big issue, because the hall or the reception bit that we were in would still lend itself for burn suppers, I believe. So we then moved from there to the racecourse in Hamilton, which is a big marquee tent, which is heated and it does all year round weddings and stuff. And that works okay as well, but that was only last year that we moved there. And during the COVID kind of time, we did it on Zoom, and that seemed to work as well. Not nearly as many people, but we still tried to get people involved and do that. And it's a fine balance, because a lot of speakers now, what I've found is a lot of the really good guys that we had, when COVID came about, they've just said, look, I've not been doing it for a couple of years and I was thinking of retiring anyway, and they've stood down from it. So getting a really good quality top table, I think, is becoming more difficult, because people are either wanting to be paid, and Motherwell Traffic don't pay the top table. What we do is we'll give them a lift from their house to the venue. They will do their presentation, their talk, their speech, whatever, and then we will give them a gift. And the gift's normally kind of, well, I don't want to say it's about 40 quid, in case we didn't give you that, Jim, you know, in case you just... But they get a commemorative bottle and an engraved box sort of thing, or whatever, and they get a lift home, and everything that night is free for them. As a result of that, we make a small profit. We cover our costs, and what we've done is we give money to local charities, but I'm not talking cancer research or, you know, big organisations. One year we learned of one of the guys' wives is a primary teacher, and one of the local villages, I'm not sure where, and they had a disabled child in the class, and they were going on a school trip, but the child needed 2 carers to take, and the council could only pay for 1. So we provided enough money for that child to be able to go on the trip. Another time we had one of the girls at work, her wee boy had cystic fibrosis, and they had a hellish time for a wee while when he was really young. And I'm really pleased to say that he's doing well now in his kind of late teenage years. But as a toddler, we gave them some money and allowed them to buy a big trampoline, and that allowed them to bounce, to move the mucus. So it's wee things like that. Motherwell Football Club do a really good thing whereby they run a football club for kids when the schools aren't on, because when the schools are on, the deprived kids are guaranteed a school dinner. But when the school's not on, they're not necessarily getting any hot meal at all. So again, we paid for the football club to provide hot meals for the kids for the week, the likes of the October school week. The kids would sign up under the kind of the heading of this is a football club, but in reality, it's a hot dinner club and there's a wee bit of football, so the kids are getting looked after. So it's that kind of stuff.
That's good.
And this year, there was a wee boy from Hamilton who is a dwarf, and he went and represented Scotland in the dwarf games in Germany there. And again, it's self-funded by his mum and dad. So we were able to give the mum and dad enough money to allow the mum as well as the dad to go over to watch the wee boy perform. So it's small things that people don't necessarily hear about, and we don't make a big song and dance about it, but it's just nice to give that wee bit back to the community, you know.
That's excellent. As a club, do you have any other events other than your supper?
No, and the Motherwell one doesn't. No, just straightforward buying that's your whack. And in fact, I get feedback every year. And a couple of years ago, one of the feedback comments was, really good supper, a wee bit too much buns in it.
I've got to say, I've spoken an awful lot about suppers in my time, and I love my night, and I didn't even get a lift, so they complain everywhere myself and make sure I get home all right. But I would recommend it to any speaker, because the audience is first class. You can hear a pin drop when you stand up to speak, and they laugh at the right times, and they're really interested. I thoroughly enjoyed my evening, I've got to say. And the whole organisation of it was first class as well. But you pinned me for Hamilton this year. You need to tell folk about Hamilton Burns Club, because it's by far and away the most different Burns Club I've ever been at.
Okay. I hope that's in a good way, though.
Well, the secretary was just, when you walk in the door and this guy's pinning you in, this is what, here's the rules.
Absolutely. Well, I've just taken over as the secretary of Hamilton, would you believe, as well. So the chap you're talking about, Robin, really, really nice guy, very, very military precision. If I spoke at it, obviously being the president last year, and it's like, right, you're on from 9:01 to 9:26, and that's your time. And he's not.
He reinforces that.
Absolutely. So Hamilton was formed in 1877, 146 years old. They used to have their suppers in the townhouse in Hamilton, and then it got too big. There was simply too many people coming to it, so they moved from there to the Bothwell Bridge Hotel, and were there for years. I mean, I'm a relatively newcomer to that supper. I've only been going, I think it's 12 years I've been at the supper. Bothwell Bridge, really good venue. As I said, same for Hamilton, it's for Motherwell, sorry. And then unfortunately, again, it shut, so we had to move from there, and we went to the racecourse as well. So for me, it was perfect, because a fortnight after having organised the Motherwell traffic one, I'm organising or helping to organise the Hamilton one, and it's the same seating, so it works out really well in that aspect. The Hamilton Burn Supper is a very formal event. You wear a white bow tie to the top table, and as Jim says, yeah, it's run with military precision. But as a result of that, it's really slick. You go in and you know exactly what you're expected of you, and you go in and you do your stuff. I think it works really well. Interestingly enough, there's a couple of artifacts that with Hamilton. The Duke of Hamilton used to own the whole of Hamilton Borough, the whole area, and he built a palace, Hamilton Palace, which was, I think it was the second biggest palace in the UK at the time, with obviously the one in London being bigger. He built a country lodge, Charterrow Country Hunting Lodge, which is only half a mile from my house. And you would be able to look from the hunting lodge all the way down oak trees to the palace, which is now in Palace Grounds Road in Hamilton. The palace is long gone, unfortunately. It got demolished. I can't remember when it was demolished. In fact, it was built in 1701 and demolished in 1932 because of the Duke of Hamilton. He was a miner, and all the coal that was extracted actually underpinned the palace, and he actually mined his own palace, and then it subsided.
Oh, dear.
It was demolished. However, the mausoleum is still there, and it's at a slight angle. You can sometimes see it, especially this time of year, and as it comes into winter and the trees shed their leaves. On the motorway on the M74, heading in towards Glasgow, if you look to your left, you'll see the mausoleum at a jaunty angle. And that was the burial site for the Duke of Hamilton. And it had, and I think it still is, the longest echo chamber. So the town is filled with rich history. But the point of the story is this mace here, or hammer, whatever you want to call it, basically, and I'll read it to you if I can. It says, presented to the Bailey. Oh man, I should wear my specs, Hamilton Burns Club, made from oak, from Hamilton Palace, January 1921. So that's actual oak from Hamilton Palace. Apparently it was from the stairs, part of the stairs. Now, what a privilege for me to be able to hold that and to show you that, that's history as we speak, and Hamilton have a lot of history and a lot of artifacts like that. That's really interesting.
George, could you do us a favour, not just now, but when we finish recording, could you take a photograph of that and send it, and we'll attach it to the podcast so people can see it in close up?
Yes, absolutely. Yep, absolutely, no bother.
That'd be brilliant.
One of the things, we had a committee meeting on Monday there actually, and as the secretary to be, I'm going to update the Constitution and Rules book because, again, I don't know if you can see the date on that, 1921.
Oh, wow.
That's an original document from 1921 that we're sitting with. So yeah, the history is phenomenal, and I love looking into that, you know, and reading about it and reading about Burns within that. You know, it's really interesting.
Fantastic.
I was actually surprised when I got the invitation from the secretary, and it said that, you know, it was no dinner suits were allowed. It had to be, you know, tails and a white tie, or alternatively, if you were wearing Highland dress, he specified the jacket you could wear, stuff like that. And I thought to myself, you know, you must be struggling to get speakers because not everybody's got it, you know, that kind of stuff, you know. But to be fair, it was a great night. Again, thoroughly enjoyable, but as I say, run with precision. It was just, you knew exactly when everything was going to happen.
Yeah, well, as you know, that night I was sitting, you were sitting to one side, and Lord George Robertson was sitting to my other side, and I'm saying to myself, I'm not telling him to shut up. You know, he can talk on if he wants. He can be a minute over.
But to be fair to him, he was bang on, and he knew. Well, that's the first time I've heard the man speak at a Burn Supper, and he really knew his audience, and he landed every point. I thought he was absolutely terrific. I really did. You know, really good. You know.
That we'd be lucky. I tend to write to my top table, as you know, and I've been lucky with the fact that they've said, yeah, okay, we'll do it, and it's something a wee bit different. And Lord George Robertson spoke at both of the suppers that I'm involved in, so I'm really pleased that he came to Hamilton for that one, because that's a slight difference with the Muller one. The Hamilton one, you're the president for a year, and then you step down. With the Muller one, you can be president or chairman for more than a year, and you try to step down.
Yeah. But right, we're talking about Burns. Have you got a favourite Burns poem or song?
I think a man's a man for all that. I think that's my favourite. 1795, I think it was, one of his last ever works, sung by Sheila Wellington at the opening of Scottish Parliament, and that to me just made it. We're not defined by wealth, position, or possessions. That's the gist of it. You can sum the whole thing up with these three words. You know, I think it just hits the mark for me. Yeah.
Have you any ambitions in the Burns movement to join up with like federation or anything like that? You as an individual, I'm talking about. You're not your clubs.
I don't think I've got enough, Jim, to be honest. I'm just happy dabbling. I'm imposter syndrome, as I said to you earlier. I'm happy to be here.
Oh dear. I would say that having been on one of the motorbikes, I don't think there'll be anybody out there that's got any time for you.
I can't hear them anyway. I'm half deaf now.
You know, the only time I've ever contravened the Road Traffic Act and been caught was by Hamilton traffic. And I was driving home from a Burns event, and I was doing a thing in Hamilton, well, Lanarkshire Association. I was at an annual event, and I got lost. And I was driving down this dual carriageway, which was 50, and I thought, if I turn left here, I might get back to the road I'm looking for. And I turned left, no seeing a 30. And of course, literally within a mile, I've got the woo, woo, woo. So I pull over, and that's me. And I never said a word to who I was or what I was. I just gave them my license and said, I'm fine, I've got it. And that's the only time I've ever got it. So I've got no great love of Hamilton traffic, I've got to say. They're Motherwell traffic as it is. So.
That's why you didn't get a lift to come on it.
With your suppers, either the Motherwell one or the Hamilton one, do you have any kind of traditions? Do you have do you always have tam o'shanter or any? Is there a standard format?
I would say the opposite. For Motherwell, I try not to have tam o'shanter every year. We have a chap called Davy Gemmell, who is one of the funniest and best reciters I've heard of tam o'shanter. He knows it inside out. And for Motherwell, he's brilliant because he goes about the audience and he'll pick up somebody's dram and he'll drink it and he'll have all the wee bits that he needs and it's really, really good. The other side of that is a chap called John Anderson from the Hamilton Burns Club, who also does tam o'shanter. And I would say John, again, is one of the best reciters that I've heard of tam o'shanter, but in a totally different way, much more formal, much more stand and look and listen, as opposed to watching somebody, wind their way through the audience sort of thing. But yeah, we've had, I would, this year, for the Motherwell one, we are having tam o'shanter. I don't know who we're having because the president decides their top table, including the poem to recite.
Very good. So the obvious question I haven't asked you, if you got a favourite poem, what about a favourite song?
I think My Love's Like a Red, Red Rose. I think that really does it for me. Yeah, it's a kind of just hits all the right spots. It's a romantic tune. You can sit and play your wife and say that's what you mean to me. That's where we are.
George, just while I've got you, I was again privileged to be invited to I suppose the annual trip of Hamilton. Is the club still going to visit places, during the year?
Yes, Hamilton are quite active. I go to the Lanarkshire Association of Burns Clubs. They meet, I think it's 3 or 4 times a year, and I go as the president of Hamilton to represent them. We have a summer outing, and when I took over as the president, I thought let's get things moving a wee bit more with regard to the social aspect of it. So we went to Covington Mains down at just outside of Abington. Burns apparently visited the farm on his road to Edinburgh.
Yep.
So they have a kind of dedication service there, the Lanarkshire Association. So we took, there's 3 of us, a past president and a member, went down and representing Hamilton for that. They also have an event at the library, which is, again, it was a rededication of the Burns statue in Hamilton. And we went to the old parish church, which is from 1734. It's one of the oldest buildings in Hamilton, if not the oldest. And they had a wee service there again for Burns. But the summer outing, it's the president's duty to arrange and take the minibus or whatever carriage they have to a venue. So this year, I resorted back to Alloway, and I thought, well, you can't go wrong. So that worked out really well. We met at 10 o'clock in the morning on the Friday, and it was a minibus full of us. So we met at the ice rink in Hamilton, and we travelled down to Ayr, and we stopped at Burns Statue Square. Went out, had a picture at the statue. Went to Burns Cottage, had a walk through that, and it was quite funny because by that time it was just before lunchtime. So we had a rucksack with us, and I managed to give everybody a dram in Burns Cottage, and we toasted the bard and we had a wee dram. And it's quite funny because the lady from whatever it was, thing with Scotland, Visit Scotland, had kind of come in and went, "There's an awful smell of drink in here." I was like, "Oh, I don't know why that is," and we left. And we went down to the museum, which is I've visited 3 or 4 times now, and it's fascinating the amount of stuff that they've got in there, and they've done really, really well with that. So we had a look in there, and then we had our lunch at the hotel. right next to it. So that was fine. And then we went up onto Tam's Brig, and there was 13 of us altogether. And what I had did was I had printed off Tam O'Shanter, but just a paragraph each. So it was at the top of the bit of paper, it said George, and then you would read it, and then at the bottom it would say pass to Jim, and then at his bit it would say Jim, pass to Douglas. And we stood in a circle on the top of Tam's Brig, and we read Tam O'Shanter as individuals, but as a whole poem. And at the end of it, we had another dram to Burns and to Tam O'Shanter. And that worked really, really well. And the amount of guys that were there that said to me after it, that was something special. It was just that moment in time, that just bonded us all together as a group of friends, and that worked really well for our summer outing this year.
It's a nice way of doing things. We'd as I said earlier on, sometimes there are meetings over Zoom during lockdown, and we come up with this idea of what we called a jigsaw poem, where somebody in each window took a verse each and went round the room, and it's a nice thing to do. And did you get an audience? Because you usually find if you do something on the Brig there that you get the tourists to come along and spot what you're doing.
I don't think the best man was too happy when we told him to be quiet during the wedding right now.
Yeah, it's really. I mean, I do an awful lot of Tam O'Shanter tours, and obviously it starts at the Birthplace Museum and it finishes at the old Brig, and most of the time it's me that's having to do any of the poem, and the last time I get the Kennedy can quite often, and there was a wee guy who was there, and he says, "Do you mind if I says, "Well, no, I'll tell you what, I'll just tell you, I'll give you the first line and you just take it and you go for there, and I'll tell you when, I'll give you that, stop, because we're moving on." And when we got to Tam's Brig, he did the last sort of 4 verses through there, the whole chase from there. And by the time we'd finished, there must have been, I don't know, 40 or 50 people who weren't involved with the Kennedy clan, all just standing watching, and then a big applause. I mean, it was one of these things you're saying yourself, it could only happen here.
It's very atmospheric.
The problem is they keep stealing the stones, the cobbles.
Aye, Chingston.
It's
they wouldn't do that when the police were there, would you?
Oh, a minute.
Well, that was Hamilton Burns Club. It was not to do with police.
We've talked about a wee bit about Tam O'Shanter there, and obviously Tam is one of the kind of main characters in Burns. Are there any other characters that have appealed to you in the Burns stories?
I think I'm impressed with his wife, for a start, and there's a whole lot actually, and I should have sat and thought about this. I thought you were going to ask me about what particular part of Burns you took an interest in, and I was going to say that what interests me just now is his time in the Dumfriesshire Volunteers. Because that's very rarely spoke about, and to me, it shows that he was prepared to potentially fight for Great Britain. People have him as a nationalist and a separatist, and I think by doing that, he kind of showed that, actually, if it came to it, then I'm prepared to fight for my country, my united country, my union, as it is at the minute. So I used it as I've done a couple of immortal memories on that subject alone, and I think it's a real interesting kind of bit. The chap, Colonel de Peyster, who he was commissioned to be the colonel in what was the equivalent of a TA unit at the time, and Jenny Uglow has written in these times, it was about the Napoleonic War, and there was a real fear of the United Kingdom being overtaken by the Spanish, and these were all small defence units that were getting sent out to defend our country, but only their villages, funnily enough. Some of the stuff saying that they could only fight up to 5 miles out with the town of Dumfries. So it was really just like an old-fashioned home guard, dad's army type thing, where they weren't allowed to invade anywhere or do any more defence than their simple area. With things like, they weren't paid for their volunteering. The colonel commissioned 100 Brown Bess rifles from Birmingham, so they only had 100 guns to defend the country from this, what could effectively have been the Spanish Armada coming to overthrow them. So that kind of thing. In his initial meeting, there was only 63 folk turned up at the thing, and to me, it showed how efficient Burns was. A lot of people I've read different bits and bobs, and they say, well, was he a drinker? Was he a bit of a womanizer? Well, he's certainly a womanizer. Was he a drinker? I'm not so sure. I think he enjoyed the company of people who drank, not necessarily that he was a drunkard. And I have been to Burn suppers and had as much fun not drinking as I have had drinking. So I think that you can do that. There's definitely a.
It's a fascinating, does Hot-to-Goal invasion threaten, let the loons beware, sir? There's wooden walls upon our seas and volunteers are sure, sir. And they've still got it. There's quite a lot of Burnsians have got together in Dumfries and refreshed it, and they have meetings every year. And in fact, we've had a couple of them on here. In fact, 3 or 4 of them on here.
Yeah.
And it's great that the tradition is still there.
Well, again, part of my kind of artifact stuff, I have a copy from William Will, his actual the book, and again it's from let's see what the year is, 1927. It's Robert Burns as a volunteer, and that's really fascinating, the stuff in it. As I say, you could sit and dissect every page of it, and have an opinion on what was written there, and that's what I love about it, and what I love about Burns, that the fact that he has done in his 37 short years, he has done so much, and people can interpret and take on his work as and how they want to. You could say that he's a separatist, he's a nationalist, he was a troublemaker, or, well, actually, wait a minute, he was an excise man, so he worked for the government. He joined the volunteers on his, and even he's kind of on his deathbed. The don't let them shoot. What was the thing at the end? Don't let the awkward squad fire over me, he had said. Now that was because his tailor had arrived at his house on his deathbed and said to Burns, "You owe me money for that uniform that I've made for you." And he was so annoyed that his perception of the government's come to get my money and I don't have any money and I'm dying here. And he had said to Jean, don't let them fire over me. Now at his funeral, there was 10,000 people attended. 10,000 people had come to a funeral without the days of the internet or telephones or anything like that. It's just phenomenal, I think.
If you walk into South Ayrshire Council offices, the first thing you see on the floor is a big sign saying "Never forget the people." Again, from the same era. It's the same poem that it's taken from. But it was a big part of his life.
Oh, absolutely, and yet people. What I was surprised. I think I've spoke 3 times doing Immortal Memory on the subject, and people come up to me after it and say, "I didn't even know he was in that. I've never heard of that before." And it just seems to be put to the side, which I don't quite know why. The Angus Fencibles, the Cinque Port Cavalry rode alongside his coffin, so that they had a big military turnout to pay homage to him as well. So he must have been well thought of within that.
you talked about the things that Burns was, or the things that Burns wasn't. One of the things that I'd like to get back to was the fact that Burns never rode a motorbike. So you need to tell us a bit about riding a motorbike.
Well, but before I do that, can I tell you a bit about drinking whiskey?
Right.
Because
well, hold on a second. We'll do that. We'll do that bit, and then I'll come back and ask you about the motorbike.
Okay, so I'm just going to chat a wee bit about whiskey. Loch Lee. Loch Lee is one of my favourite whiskies at the minute. Obviously, Loch Lee is one of the farms that Burns was from. The distillery down there, it's from the actual farm. I'll open the bottle up to let you see it. Lovely looking colour of whiskey. They have, I think this is the 13th that they've produced now. Started in 2021, producing and then releasing in 2023. The bottle, I don't think you'll be able to see it, but it's actually got ridges up and down the side here, and that's to represent the farm tracks on the field, which I thought was a really nice touch. So yeah, that's one of my favourite drams. So
you use that to delay talking about the thing that Burns never did, which was riding motorbikes. But you've given us a link by talking about tracks, because obviously motorbikes have got tracks. So tell us a bit about your career on the motorbikes.
I like that link there. That was good. I drove. We were in the VIP protection motorcycle part of it, whereby we would escort the royals and VIPs, dignitaries, people of high danger, if you like, that perhaps going to be kidnapped, whatever. And we used to motorcycle them about all over the country. And I'm proud to say that if you weren't riding a motorbike, you were driving a car. It was the same small units. You'd rather drive a car or be in the motorbikes. And the reason for that was that if you were a biker driving a car, you knew how many motorbikes were whizzing by you, because it was your team that you were working with. And I had the privilege of driving every single royal apart from the Queen, because she had her own driver over my time doing that. So I thoroughly enjoyed it. One of the wee kind of funny stories was that we were waiting at Glasgow Airport for the Queen to arrive, Queen and the Duke of Edinburgh, and the Queen's car's there, and we're all sitting on our motorbikes waiting on the plane arriving, and it arrives. And she gets out, and as the plane's arriving, the driver gets out and he puts some tyre shine on his side of the car, only his tyres. I said, why are you not doing the other side? He says, because the Queen's not getting on the other side.
Very good. And do you have an interest in motorbikes or cars now that you're not doing as much of it?
I do. I just bought a motorbike similar to my works motorbike. It's a BMW RT, which is a 1200 bike. It's a civilian spec of my police motorbike, if you like. And there was 6 of us just went to France. We did the Normandy beaches and looked at a few bits of the World War I and World War II history out there. So we were over for 10 days, just rode down and rode back up. So thoroughly enjoyed that. Yeah, I'm still out and about doing that. Yep.
George, what is it about all men and motorbikes? Because every time you see bikers now, they're all ancient.
I think it's the only ones with any time or money, you know. So I've only got the time.
Very good. Well, I mean, it seems a strange link talking about Burns and mentioning motorbikes, but it reminded me of a story that Wilson Ogilvie, who was a well-known Burnsian, he used to tell the story of becoming known as a collector of Burns memorabilia. And somebody knocked on his door one day with this battery lamp and claimed it was Robert Burns' motorbike lamp.
It could well be. The only thing I would say is if I ever die, I just hope my wife sells my motorbikes and my whiskies for the actual price that I paid for them, and not the price I told her.
Jim, we're nearly finished. Any last questions for George?
No, not really, but I think we're doing great here.
George, anything that you haven't told us about yourself or your Burns career?
I don't think so. Lastly, I would like to say thank you very much for inviting me on here. I'm walking in the shadows of giants, absolutely. The people that you've had on and the two of you guys are doing an absolutely fantastic job, and good on you, and well done for doing that. So thank you for inviting me along. I thoroughly enjoyed it. It's been more relaxed than I thought it was going to be. I have no idea what nonsense I've spouted over the last so many minutes. But, hopefully.
Well, you mentioned before we started that you would let us have some photographs of some of your suppers, so we'll attach them to the end of the podcast.
Okay.
And in the meantime, it just leaves me to say, George, thanks very much for telling us about your life with Robert Burns. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.